It's day 392 of my Growing Giant Bangkok Guava from Cutting series. It's 2020, February 1st. Although the daily lows over the last 2 months haven't dipped below 43 Fahrenheit, the leaves are turning purplish. I read that the leaves turn purple on guava plants when the temperatures are too low. So even though the weather here in San Diego, California is considered to be very, very mild to the rest of the nation and to much of the world, it's still too cold, being mostly in the 40s, I would say, in Fahrenheit, if the online sources are to be believed. But maybe they're wrong, and maybe the temperatures did get near freezing point at night. Either that, or maybe this plant isn't as frost tolerant as the online recommendations go. So I've read sources that say if it gets below freezing or at freezing for an hour, that's enough to kill off a lot of your guava plant. Or if it dips a few Celsius below, that can kill your plant all the way to the root. So it's day 407. The leaves are yet a more dark purple, and now I think I'm going to lose all this foliage that I worked so hard to grow in 2019. So I had no way of knowing this would get so bad, but if I had moved this indoors, not only do I not have that much space for it, but it wouldn't get any light as well. So maybe either way, the outcome wasn't going to be good. So I'm going to do some pruning since I think this stuff is all lost anyway, the foliage. So that's one of the original branches. It is a pity to chop off that much at once, and I'm going to chop off several of these smaller offshoots because they don't really seem to be able to support themselves. They're really thin compared to the main stem, the original branch that was chosen to be a cutting that was sold. So I have these two branches left. One is the main stem, one is an offshoot, and the main stem lost a few leaves. Luckily, I do see signs of life, some new growth coming out. So that's coming out at the right angle. It's at least, it's not going up at 45 degrees, but at least 30, 35. So it shows some promise. That's the problem with cuttings. They generally grow sort of more horizontally and need to be staked and whatnot. They need a lot of support, otherwise they tend not to grow straight up. So it does seem like a huge waste of foliage, but I figured if there was any time to prune, it should be now, when all the leaves are turning purple and, in my estimation, are a lost cause. So it's very pretty to look at, but that's over with, and we'll see where this series goes from here on out. So yeah, there's been hardly any growth over the last few weeks, so it's just like week after week of looking at this. So it's yeah, it is what it is, and I think this plant will recover. It should do really well in 2020 because I've transplanted it into a 75% sand, 25% clay soil mixture. So the roots should be able to develop with greater aeration. So it's day 449. Here's some rare morning footage. I think my guava cutting is still overwintering. Not much progress at all. These leaves are not really changing color anymore. They're just sort of facing downwards in some cases and basically just waiting to fall off, although it's taking a really long time. So my cutting looks all bare down there, and it's not entirely straight. It's the same result as when people just keep topping the plant over and over. Sometimes it's well intentioned, but regardless, if you keep topping, it's not going to grow perfectly straight because you've interrupted the trajectory of the growth, and now it has to sprout something at the side, so it becomes more and more lopsided and imbalanced over time the more you do it. So that's basically what's going on here. And I'm watering because I haven't watered in a super long time. So hopefully that can get things going. We're approaching spring in San Diego. So I think it's time for some development. It's day 457. So there's still not that much going on here. It looks like the bark might be peeling a little bit here in this section, which means the main trunk, so to speak, is expanding a little bit. And as you can see, there are some offshoots that are new, and these have developed a little bit more. The angle's changed. It's more of an acute angle going upwards, which is exactly what I want. I don't want any of this horizontal downwards growth, of which I all pruned away. Some of these leaves are facing downwards. I don't know how they end up like that. Some of these guava leaves tend to end up in awkward positions, but we have a new offshoot over there. So things look promising. And that's the remainder of one leaf. And some new foliage growing at the top. So I think things are looking up once again. Although the edges of these new leaves is a little bit reddish purplish. And here's another offshoot that I might have to trim. It's just facing downwards slightly. So I'm going to apply my first application of imidacloprid for this plant in 2020. This should protect my guava for many months. So this is just something that I apply in spring for my plants all at once. I did it, I forgot the timing of my imidacloprid treatment last year, but it's something where you only need to apply it maybe once or twice a year, and it should protect your plants for a really long time. And I'm just washing the residual imidacloprid, if any, off the trunk and the stem. Though I don't really think it matters that much. You have little offshoots like that. So I moved by mid-April. I moved my plants first, actually, before I moved all my furniture over. It's day 484. We had a heat wave in Southern California in mid-April, which triggered a growth spurt for all my plants. As you can see, I might trim away a lot of that stuff at the bottom. It's just too low-lying. It would constantly get wet as I water and so forth. So there's a real contrast here between the new growth. Look how long those shoots have gotten between the last clip and this clip. And on the existing stems, they're elongating, and there's a lot of new foliage coming out. There's actually not that many purple leaves left. They seem to have turned green somewhat in the centers. Maybe they're being reinvigorated by the warmer weather. But for the most part, I either pruned them away or they fell off. So I'm applying some fertilizer. I haven't shown the previous squirt bottle applications of Miracle-Gro in this video prior to this date. Prior to this date, the concentration was just too high for all my plants. And that's ironically because I was following the instructions. And maybe the instructions, according to outdoor plants, you need 1 big scoop per gallon. And these don't get any light right now because nothing is getting direct sunlight during the day on this balcony, which is 50% bigger than my last one. But I think this place doesn't get direct sun until the winter. So I drilled some new holes later on at the bottom to get rid of that half an inch or inch of water that was collecting between the inner and outer waste baskets for all these makeshift pots that I made out of dual Rubbermaid waste baskets. So they're made of a soft plastic, and I figured 2 would provide great structure, but you can see there's a little bit of leaf burn at the ends here from fertilizer. So 8 days ago, on day 506, I applied half a gallon of fertilizer on average to all my plants at too high of a concentration Again, I followed the instructions. I used 1 big scoop per gallon, and I noticed here and in my avocado, which is very fast growing, a little bit of fertilizer burn. So I started doing these giant tap water flushes, and in the following week I saw a giant growth spurt for most of my plants, probably because the concentration of the fertilizer was finally right, but it was very high, which resulted in the growth. So on day 513, here's some rare nighttime footage. I did a giant tap water flush 4 days ago to get rid of some more fertilizer to see if that would have an even greater effect. On the left there you can see a leaf sort of in the middle with a burned tip, and you can see some that are curled here and there. This thing is growing pretty nicely. So it's day 529. The growth rate of my plants slowed down significantly after 3 more giant tap water flushes. So I figured it's time to reestablish some kind of nutritional regimen. So my new regimen is 1 small scoop instead of 1 large scoop. Perhaps that's more suited for indoor plants normally, but these don't get any direct sun. So tap water volumes vary according to how much space is available on the top of the pot, and I'm putting in a sprinkling of crushed vitamin pill dust, which is not meant to provide vitamins for the plant that it doesn't need, but rather to provide for all the trace metals, micronutrients that my plants need. So I know I did this maybe 3 years ago or so, or maybe up to 4 years ago on my channel for various plants, and people didn't quite understand, judging from the comments, what my aim was in some cases. So it's day 535. I did lots of pruning on this day, and as you can see here, that's quite exciting. The main trunk is expanding, and it's still like this fresh young green inside, despite all this old bark and bark fibers that were on this cutting. So the plant is looking to expand fast, and much like reptiles and insects, it molts over and over by shedding its existing bark and then growing new bark later on. But I don't think I have the thickness here to be growing a serious amount of bark anytime soon. Getting rid of a lot of these non-functional leaves, anything that's still got a old purplish look to it. I have some really big leaves now, so I don't think these small ones serve any purpose really. So I'm going to prune away any leaf that looks unsightly or anesthetic, anything that's pointing in an odd direction such as this one, anything that still exhibits signs of overwintering or fertilizer burn. So all of these leaves can go. There's no need to be shy here because I've got many new leaves at the ends of my stems and branches that are much bigger, maybe even 10 times as big, as I'll show you in a few minutes. So these have been burned by fertilizer, and now that I'm on this new lower dose regimen of fertilizer, everything's growing really well. All of my plants are doing really well, so the aesthetics of this plant should continue to improve and impress. So it's day 555. It's day 2 of an intense heat wave in Southern California and much of the southern United States actually. So as you can see, it's quite shocking, but when I pulled this plant away from the balcony rail, I realized that this thing couldn't support itself in the slightest. I did emergency watering and fertilization yesterday because this plant can't even wait a week anymore in this kind of heat with such big leaves. Even without the heat wave, this plant just has so many leaves that are huge like this that it uses way too much water for a sand and soil mixture like that. So none of these branches can support their own weight, but they're beautiful to look at. And not only that, my plant is basically entirely bug free. There's nothing on this plant. There are no annoying webbings, no spiders, no spider mites. I can touch these leaves and manipulate the branches like this without feeling like I need to take a shower and wash my hands afterwards. So these leaves are about 6.5 inches for the biggest ones. If you've seen leaves bigger than this, please let me know, but judging from the pictures I see online, I don't see anything that comes close to these. I'm going to prune this one last branch because it can't support its own weight. So anything that is growing funny is just out. And as you can see, there are other new offshoots that are doing just fine and growing the way they should. So I'm using this railing and this wall as support. I might have to tie it to the balcony rail with some string to get it to grow right and have better structure, but I'm really pleased at the result here. So thanks for watching, and please stay tuned to my YouTube channel.